Welcome to the Podium Pod, the Pick and Rolls National Basketball Podcast, as we continue Paris 2024. I'm Adam Webster, and I'm joined today, firstly, by NCAA champion, NBA scout and analyst, low man help, Marc Campbell.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, not doing great after that one.
It's better than us. And also by the Pick and Rolls, Michael Houben. Michael, fresh out of Summer League, you've been jet setting, you've been sightseeing, but you're back on the hallowed ground of Australia now, and you just watched the Boomers lose to Canada.
Yeah, that was a tough one. I guess we have the privilege when we write for the Pick and Roll of taking our time and, sort of writing things out objectively, but it's so hard jumping on a live after a game like that. The tensions are running high, and it's hard not to feel deflated after a tough loss like that.
It was tough. I think we talked about the emotional roller coaster of the first game in the first stream that we did, Marc, and this was no different. This was an emotional roller coaster. The final score was 93-83. Of course, the Boomers defeated Spain by 12 points. That brings their plus-minus differential to +2, so they are only just on the positive side of the ledger. I want to talk about this game first before we talk about what the result means. Marc, why did the Boomers lose this game? How did the Boomers lose this game?
I think halftime adjustments were a massive deal in this one. I thought that Canada and Jordi Fernandez, they did a wonderful job of coming out and adjusting how they were going to attack offensively. They did a really good job of bringing guards up to set screens to get Dyson off the ball to be able to attack, whether they're getting downhill against Patty or Josh, or if the Boomers showed help, they moved it to advantages to kind of crack the shell. I thought getting Dyson off the ball was a massive deal for them because Dyson was stifling everything in the first half. And then defensively, they didn't allow the Australian guards to just dribble, and walk into threes on cross matches in the pick and roll. And they didn't allow the ball to get down low. They fronted hard with guards. They made everything difficult, and Australia couldn't make open shots, and they never could change the point of attack for the entry to go high-low for Landale when the guards like Nembhard were fronting. So I think Jordi and Canada made wonderful counter adjustments at halftime, and then Gorgon and the Boomers never adjusted back. They never threw a counter punch after that, and that was all she wrote.
Michael, really tough loss for the Boomers. They were in it up to their eyeballs to halftime, but just couldn't quite bridge the gap in that second half when Canada took over at the start of the third quarter. What were the key factors in this loss for you?
Yeah, that really was the tipping point, right? And I think there were so many positives to be gleaned, which I'm sure we'll get to from that first half. So many exceptional performances. But I think, Dyson Daniels, as you said, he had a phenomenal 40 minutes, really. He was fantastic the whole game.
Mm-hmm.
And there was no point where SGA really got the better of him. It was just the fact that they were able to mix it up a little bit more and get him off of him a little bit more. I think if Dyson had him one-on-one for the whole game on an island, he would have had his way.
Yeah.
And then down the other end as well, the adjustments they made, it made it really tough. I thought, throwing Lou Dort on Josh Giddey really threw him for a tailspin for a while there, and it just took us a bit too long to regain our composure. It wasn't until Dante really steadied the ship there that we sort of found our feet again, but it was too late.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's talk about the first half firstly, because we can talk about some positives for a change. I mean, the Boomers played a really strong first half, Marc, and it was punctuated by Josh Giddey. He had 13 points to halftime. He was attacking. He was aggressive. He was able to get most of his shots to go. He was taking three-pointers. He made one. So Josh Giddey was kind of the key up to halftime, and this seemed like a real sort of vendetta performance, which a lot of people kind of predicted going into this game against his old teammate, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander.
Yeah, the Josh Giddey revenge tour. It got off to a rousing start. He was doing a wonderful job on the cross matches, on the pick and roll. He was taking his time. He took shots. He found himself getting into the lane when they pressed, and he had an advantage. He didn't sit back and pull it back out. He kept attacking downhill, in rhythm, on balance. And the most thing was he was under control. Everything he was getting to, he was in rhythm, he was on balance, he was under control. And then that made all the difference in the second half. They really sped him up. Michael's right. Lou Dort sped him up. They got him going. They got a few turnovers from behind. And the Giddey that we saw in the first half that was composed, that had belief in himself, that was taking everything in rhythm and on balance. In the second half, we saw him rushing things. We saw a few turnovers out of him that were just, you can live with some where he's hitting it ahead, trying to find an opening. They're trying to play fast, but when you're turning it over on the ball, when you're getting stripped on the ball, and then you're rushing shots, like those kill you. They turn into wide open ones the other way instead of, take it out of bounds. We set our defense. So I thought that in the first half, we saw the Josh Giddey that you really wanted to see. We saw the revenge tour, like I'm here type Josh Giddey. In the second half, they sped him up. They got the best of him. And it was a tough one for Giddey.
Michael, Jock Landale had a strong outing across the game. He had 5 points and 7 boards to halftime, finished with 16 and 12. He hadn't taken many shots to halftime, but he looked really dangerous whenever the ball came into his hands in a winning position down low. What could the Boomers potentially have done a little differently with Jock Landale early on to capitalize on the way he was playing?
That really felt like that was Canada's Achilles heel for me, was the lack of size, the lack of rim protection. I think we saw that not just with Jock, but also with Dyson and Josh in the first half, just getting feet in the paint and using their size as guards to finish in the paint. But it would have been great to see a more concerted effort to get Jock a few more paint touches, I think. We saw him in the Spain game as well, being fantastic, when he had guys on the block converting. And I don't think guys like Dwight Powell or Kelly Olynyk could really do much against Jock when he was in those situations. We only saw it maybe once or twice the whole game. And as fantastic as Jock was, just, playing in the paint, in the dunker spot, getting those opportunistic points, I think we could have made a greater emphasis offensively, getting him the ball down low.
100%.
Go, Marc.
Yeah, 100%. He needed more touches. He was bullying anybody. It didn't even have to be a cross match. You're right. Powell, Birch, nobody could guard him. And he was getting anything he wanted, jump hook left shoulder, jump hook right shoulder. He was putting people under the rim. He needed the ball more. They needed to lean into him more. That was a massive point of advantage for the Boomers, and he just needed more touches. There's no doubt about
it. We got to talk about the 4 spot. We've talked a lot about Nick Kay. We've talked a lot about Jack McVey. Michael, firstly, we're getting a really rich experience of Jack McVey in this tournament because we're seeing some great missed threes. We're seeing some turnovers and fouls that are regrettable or some beaten defensive coverages. I mean, Jack isn't there because he's a sensational defender. He's there because he's a shooter. He's there because he can make an open 3-point shot, which he did on a few occasions. He was 3 of 5 from 3 today. Nick Kay struggled in the first half, which meant that Jack had to play a little bit more than you would usually play. Then at different points during the game, they were both on the court at the same time. So Gorge was kind of switching up the forward rotations as well. What did you see out of that position of Nick Kay and Jack McVey? Marc, you've said enough about Nick Kay. I'm going to ask Michael one question about Nick Kay. You've already talked about him for 20 good minutes on this show.
Yeah. Oh, look, it was a tough position for us, I think. I think if you look if you take a step back now that the game's concluded and you look at what Jack contributed, I think that is the Jack McVey experience, right? Overall, we got what we needed from him. He hit a couple of really big shots from outside the arc, and particularly in a game where we regressed a little bit from outside the arc, those threes were really pivotal. I think, physically he really stood out in this game against Canada's athletes. And not being able to have the ever reliable Nick Kay sort of come in there and hold the fort at that position for the remainder of the minutes really hurt. I think that's why we saw some of the smaller lineups like Dyson at the 4, a little bit down the stretch there. And, you look at who the leading scorer was for Canada at the end of this game, it was RJ Barrett. We did a fantastic job on SGA, but RJ is a guy that uses his size, his physicality against these guys. And, you can't afford to have a guy like McVey at the 4 when you have someone like Barrett down the other end taking advantage. So I thought that was a really tough position for us, and we got taken advantage of a bit there tonight.
Marc, I'll go to you now to talk about the 4 position. I know Nick Kay is one of your favorite topics. He really struggled in the first half. He finally saw one shot go down and played an improved game in the second half, but certainly not to the level that you would expect him to play and the level that he's played over the last few weeks.
No, I think this one was the most disappointing Nick Kay experience I've seen. In the lead up, one of the things that stood out to me the most for him was that he just believed in his process, and every single time, make or miss, he was going to do everything right that he knew in that play, and he wouldn't get in his head, and misses didn't affect him. Tonight was the first time that I've seen him get in his head, and he airballed a floater, he airballed a three, and the makes and misses, those were controlling his emotions, not if I'm taking the right shot, if I'm making the right pass. And to me, it's not so much about McVey, because McVey is coming off the bench. When you're coming off the bench, if you get something, great. If you don't get something, fine. But you're not taking the majority of the minutes. Like, we're not leaning on you to be the rock at this position. You're kind of like, great. If we get it, great. If we don't, no problem. And Jack's wonderful for that role. But Nick K, for me, seeing him take this one, go back in the tank, and if he comes back out and we see process, great. But if he's led by his emotions in terms of if the ball goes in or not, that's a formula for failure for any player out there. If you think, you die, and you got to be able to go to the next play, go to the next play, go to the next play, and not try to get it all back the next play.
Well, someone else that's wonderful for their role is Team Feet. The Podium Pod is brought to you by Team Feet. Team Feet offers premium athletic socks for modern teams, however they compete, with sweat wicking cotton, arch support, ventilation panels, and compression stitching. Team Feet socks are built to outperform. Whether your team is tiny or 1,000 strong, Team Feet unites and excites your players and supporters with their combination of quality and performance. Join basketball teams around Australia and the world by choosing Team Feet. For designs and worldwide delivery, head to teamfeet.com. Thank you to Team Feet for supporting the Podium Pod. I want to talk about Dante Exum, Michael Houben, because Dante was incredible across this whole game. He was brave. He was clearly playing through a hell of a lot of pain, and he just got to the rim again. He shot from the outside as well, hit a couple of free throws with that finger despite getting a couple of knocks. But more than that, really steadied the ship and kind of brought the Boomers back into the game in the second half. He was just wonderful.
Yeah, we didn't really know what we were going to get from Dante, did we? It wasn't even a given that he was going to suit up in this one, but thank goodness he did. I think he was a massive, as I said, the timeliness of his ability to see the ship there and get some points on the board. His first step is 2nd and 9. He's blown by everyone getting into the paint there. That the touch around the paint was fantastic. But more than anything, that composure and that experience from Dante was really important. I think, if we ended up winning this game, he would have been one of the storylines. And, not just his play in a vacuum, but also the fact that he was playing with that finger. You could see him grasping at it a few times. It was clearly bothering him, but, it was a valiant performance from Dante, and he made a big impact.
Marc, Dante Exum was absolutely brilliant on both ends. I mean, defensively, he was solid, but it was more that when he had the ball in his hands, it felt more comfortable. And really good and interesting comment here. Offense stagnated every time Giddey was off unless Exum was on. That's a really well-formed comment. I think it's clear if they were lacking one of those two guys in this contest, even though Dyson Daniels, who we'll talk about in a minute, was really, really good across the game as well. They needed that general. They needed the point guard. They needed someone to steer the ship, and that was either Josh Giddey or Dante Exum. Giddey dominated the first half. Exum dominated the second, but they both couldn't be good at the same time in this contest.
Yeah. No, I think Michael's spot on, because they got to a point. It's not like they got blown out this game. It was 74-72 after Dante really propelled him back in and righted the ship. Up 4 at half, 8-0 run, for Canada in there. And then Dante came in after the 5 turnovers to start the second half, which is just brutal. And Dante came in and he started attacking once they beat pressure. And I think one of the big things that mattered in terms of him attacking is he gave a threat to go finish at the rim, as opposed to when it was Patty. Patty's not scaring you going downhill at the rim. He's trying to stop, shoot pull-ups, things like that. And so Dante was phenomenal. Dante did a great job attacking, getting him back in the game. I think you propelled him forward emotionally as well. Like, when you see a guy out there, they know how rough it is for him right now. And every single time he gets hit or anything, it's painful. So to see him out there giving it for you, I think it gave everybody a lift. And it was just more about having them come along with him. He needed somebody else to come along with him there at the end as a guard to really take the torch and bring it home. And Patty, Josh, Dante, or Dyson, none of them grabbed it and were able to really push it forward after he got him back in it.
Michael, Dyson Daniels was a man possessed across the first half of this ball game on both ends. He was incredibly consistent. He obviously, to your point earlier, did a great job against one of the very best players in the world, to the point where Canada threw everything at trying to get him off Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. I mean, that has to give us a tremendous sense of comfort and positivity heading into the Dyson Daniels experience across not just the Greece game, but his entire NBA and Boomers career, because he's ready to take the next step into consistent NBA starter based on performances like this.
It's been absolutely phenomenal. I think, this is really the first time we've seen Dyson in a significant role as a Boomer, and he has well and truly blown all expectations away as far as I'm concerned, coming into this starting role. And if we came through and won this game, I think we'd be talking about this as, like an all-time defensive performance from Dyson.
Yeah.
It was almost flawless, in my opinion, against SGA. Like, every single possession, he was on an island with him. He doesn't jump at anything. He's super disciplined. We saw him even get a block a couple of times. SGA barely got a free throw attempt this whole game as well. I think he maybe got one or two, but they definitely weren't on Dyson. Marc, I know you got the stats in terms of who exactly he scored on, but he was just phenomenal. I think he established himself, if we didn't already think it, as, one of the world-class perimeter defenders in the world.
Yeah. Nobody wants to have him guarding you on ball. I mean, it's unbelievable how he moves. He is locked down. There is no fear. He's athletic enough to move, and he has great instincts. I think SGA had him 2 buckets. One was a tough post-up fadeaway. There was one that I think really, to me, stood out as I couldn't tell if Gorge sent McVey. I couldn't tell if he got word from the bench to go double, but he came and doubled in the post. Dyson versus SGA in the post, and then it ended up high-low action. Barrett help up the lane, Landale dunk for Powell. And I thought that one moved it from, they had cut it back, and I thought it was a 2-point game then. I think that moved it to 4 or 4 to 6. But that to me was one of the big ones where this guy can lock down, leave him alone. Do not come over here. Stop acting like this guy isn't the best perimeter defender out there in the tournament right now on the ball, and leave him alone. That to me, I couldn't see who sent him, or I couldn't tell if Jack did it on his own, but that one stood out to me because SGA was having nothing but problems with Dyson, and they should have left him on an island and let him handle his own and lock everything else up.
Marc, I want to talk about a topic that we spoke about last week in the preview for this Olympics, and that is the confident shot making and shot taking. I have to talk about Josh Green, because there were multiple instances in the second half where Josh Green just passed up wide open jumpers, either to one dribble and mid-range to drive. But, Canada were giving him acres of space, and Josh Green was not responding well to that. And we spoke about that role enthusiasm and role acceptance, and Josh Green is out there to take those shots. That's precisely why Matisse Thybulle is not on the plane, is not in this team. And Josh Green didn't take those shots. We got to talk about it.
Yeah, not only did he not take them, when he did take them, they were absolute rockets. They were not, he was at the point, because he didn't take so many of them. It felt like when he did take them, he was like, oh, I got to take this, otherwise I'm not taking it. And he was taking the wrong ones. He was not taking them in rhythm and on balance. He was just catch fire, just absolute missiles. And I feel like the Josh Green of it all tonight, he's one of their better defenders, and they couldn't keep him out there because he was not cutting well when he had space, and he was not shooting in rhythm and on balance shots. And I felt like if they were able to have a little bit more Josh Green out there, you wouldn't have had the Patty and Giddey minutes where they could bring up any screener to get Dyson off the ball. You probably want Dyson off of SGA, but if you're bringing up Green, you're not really that excited about it. We're not giving up so much, and you can pre-switch a lot more things with only one guard that you're trying to hide, whether it's Patty or Giddey. But when you have 2 of them, you can't really pre-switch anything to keep them out of the action. So I thought Green's lack of offensive confidence and the fact that you couldn't get him on the court more tonight because he was hurting you so much was really, really detrimental to their defense as well.
Michael, it's one of those things where we look at Josh Green and the athleticism and the defense, and you desperately want to see him on the court for a significant portion of the game. But if he's not going to take those shots, if he's not going to make one out of every three even, then it makes it exceedingly difficult to be able to leave him out there for long stretches.
Well, Gorgin's whole roster was predicated on these, being able to switch with multiple elite wings on the, rotation here. And Josh is just not tenable enough on the offensive end right now to make it work. We know that Josh, can bring those sort of 1%ers, the rebounding, the energy, the defense. That's all great. I saw someone describe his performance against Spain as one of the better 0-point performances, but we can't have 0-point performances every time around, right? We've got to have some shots being knocked down. So I think that one quietly really hurt us tonight as well.
Yeah.
Now, this next topic is probably going to cause a little bit of a furor in the comments. I might lose my citizenship. Marc, you may not be allowed the country. We're getting a lot of comments.
Be brave.
We're getting a lot of comments regarding Patty Mills. And I will preface all of this conversation with Patty Mills almost single-handedly won this country a bronze medal in Tokyo. He is a hero. He is one of the greatest basketball players this country has produced and the greatest international basketball player this country has ever produced. He should not have been out there down the stretch in this game, is my view. And he struggled against this team. It was a bad matchup for him. A few of the comments have said that. He is getting older. He is getting slower. We spoke about it at length once again in the preview episode, Marc. Everything that we talked about is either going one of two ways. It's either the team's either doing it and it's working, or they're avoiding it or going a different way. And hey, guess what? They're not sticking to the plan. And the multiple actions thing, I want you to touch on that, because I saw Patty use multiple actions tonight in so many different circumstances, and it didn't pay off. And we spoke about it at length, how he needs to be more streamlined. He needs to have less actions. He needs to not stack actions on top of each other. He needs to be, the type of player that can just get the ball and put it up in the right position. And we didn't see that from Patty, but the difference was that he was not off the floor. And when I think it's not a great thing to see Gorge not able to take him off the floor when he's playing like that, because I just don't see that he was one of our best 5 players down the stretch that should have been on the floor.
Yeah, I think throughout the selection process and then the warm-up games, we have seen Gorge be cutthroat and put the team above everything else. I think we were talking offline. This is probably the first time where we've seen him stand on ceremony a little bit. And I think you have to have a certain level of trust and belief in your guys that they're going to get it there. And we don't know what was being said in the huddle in terms of how they were communicating, but you hope that your guy, because you needed the shooting out there, we hope that your guy can get to the point where he calms down and settles down a little bit and stops compounding mistakes by trying to get it all back in one play. And I thought that was Patty's night. He was trying to get everything back in one play. He wasn't, moving through the system, moving through the gears in rhythm, playing with the squad. And I thought early on in the game, he did a really good job. Like the one he got, the 3 free throws. To me, it's more about the pre-snap action with Patty. If Patty's on the ball and you can have ball pressure plus 8 more eyes on him, that's not something where he's got the juice to beat those actions all the time. And I thought there were way too many of those moments and way too few of he's setting a back screen, then coming off a down. He's setting a cross screen, then he's doing something else, then he's getting a DHO. Like, you want him having pre-snap action so that he's attacking from an advantage when he gets the ball, instead of he needs all these dribbles and then everybody's looking at him. He's trying to make something happen. One that really stood out to me was in the second half on the right side, and he had a switch in a pick and roll with Landale. And he shot this shot that I've seen him shoot a ton of times, where he digs into somebody, glides away, and then tries to shoot a fadeaway. And I've seen him shoot it 4 times in the warmups, and I saw him shoot it this time, and 3 of the times he's missed it high off the backboard. And that shot, to me, that's the one, when I see him shoot that one, I always think to myself, all right, like he's trying to get it all back right here. He's trying to say like, oh, I'm still Patty. And to me, like that shot really symbolized his night in a nutshell of trying to get it all back in one play, not playing enough with pre-snap action and letting others create advantages for him to play off of.
Marc, Michael, I don't want ASIO to knock on your door or anything, but I need you to comment on this as well, because I think you're absolutely right, Marc. There were moments there where Paddy took shots where you thought, if that's the best shot we've got, then that's a really, really bad sign. And I think Canada, you've got to give Canada a ton of credit too. They made it exceedingly difficult for Paddy to get in any situations where he was at an advantage. So you do have to give Canada their due, just like you give them their due for disrupting Giddy in the second half, for fronting Jock Landale. I don't think we should bury the lead here. Canada played a sensational game as well. They're a deserved medal contender. But down the stretch, Michael, Paddy was not one of the players out there on the floor that you could honestly, hand on heart, say, this is going to be the best chance that we have of winning this game.
I hate to say it, but when he came on for that final stint, I got a little bit nervous. You never know. I mean, Paddy, for better or worse, is a volatile player. That's the nature of his game. But, the way it is right now, with Paddy in the past, you ride or die by Paddy. We have lived on, to some extent, Paddy's hero ball for many major tournaments. And a lot of the times he's come up as the hero. But, as you said, it's cutthroat now. We need to make decisions on the fly. This is a tournament where you can't sort of ride on guys' legacies. You have to be there in the here and now and make those split-second decisions. I think the way the game was going, I think the way that, Paddy went throughout the game, he wasn't the option down the stretch. Now, that's an impossible task for Gorgon to sort of pull the pin on and say we're going to go in a different direction down there. And, it's easy to say. We've seen time and time again Paddy have a rough shooting night, but then come up when, he's needed most and hit those big shots. It just didn't feel like the sort of game where, that was going to be the best look for us. And I don't think it necessarily paid dividends to have him on down the stretch there.
So looking forward, we have a group stage that has one game remaining. We have Spain on 1 win. They beat Greece. We have Canada on 2 wins, Australia on 1 win, Greece a 0 from 2 games. Australia play Greece on Friday night at 9:30. So we'll be back, obviously, win or lose or otherwise, after that game on a stream here on the Podium Pod, just as we will after every Opals and Boomers game of this 2024 Paris Olympic Games. But the fact is the Boomers have to win this game to assure themselves a place in the quarters. If they lose this game and Spain also lose, then you're risking having to be one of the 2 best placed third place teams in the group stage. And that will mean that you are seeded against one of the top 2 teams in the tournament, which will be likely the USA, France, or Canada. You'll get a date with one of those teams in the quarterfinals. If you end up winning that game and having the right points differential and other results potentially go your way, maybe Spain shock Canada, and there are 3 teams on 2 wins in this group, then you hope that you win by a lot and that your point differential carries you through to first or carries you through to second, and you can play another second place team. You've got more of a chance of making potentially a semi-final. But Marc, all the marbles are on the line now against Greece, and Giannis Antetokounmpo, whilst he hasn't won a game yet, he has done everything humanly possible to get Greece a W in this tournament so far. He's a man possessed.
Yeah, he's been great. I think one thing, looking back on this game and going forward in the tournament, I always like this phrase that used to be a thought of the day at Chapel Hill in Carolina, and it was, you can look at things as stumbling blocks or stepping stones. And so when they go back into this tape and they get inside, they have a day or 2 to let it waft over them and decompress and get into the truth of it all. Are they going to look at this and say, okay, like, here are the moments, and here's the way that we found success before of playing together or finding the mismatches or this and that? And are they going to let that propel them forward in terms of a newfound enthusiasm, and they're going to use this as a stepping stone and not a stumbling block? And so to me, this game could be a big deal to set them up for a ton of success down the road, as this tournament progresses. I think if you looked at this group before and you asked, all Australians, hey, if you go into this game against Greece and win or lose, like you're going to be second in the group if you win, I think everybody would be excited. If you were going into this 1-1 and you were +2 on the point differential, you would be pumped up. You would be like, yes, like that's a great thing. So I think you're still in a good spot. You have all to play for. And to get one like this where you really had control of the game and a few adjustments that you didn't actually counter to the counters. If you go back in and say, okay, you know what? We're a really good team. We've got to be able to counter these things and stay true to what we know is our core. I think you're in a great spot moving forward.
Michael, to wrap us up, what do you think the Boomers' chances are against this Greece team? What should we be expecting? Who are the key players for you in this contest?
Yeah, look, I think we would be the favourites coming into this game. As you said, Greece, have lost a couple of games already. And I think we've, even looking tonight, obviously there are no moral victories in a tournament like this, but there were a lot of positives as it pertains, to the next game. And, I think we're in good stead. I think we're going to see a little bit more of Magne perhaps in this next Greek game. Tonight wasn't really his matchup. I think we're going to see more and we need more from him. In that,
Giannis is a big man.
Absolutely, need that size and that physicality from Big Will for sure. But I think, we run it back when it all is said and done tonight. It was a hell of a game. Two really strong teams. We weren't on the winning side tonight, but Canada are a heck of a team, and I think we stand a really good chance against Greece going forward into this next one.
Tons of positives to take from this one. Tons of positives.
100%.
Tons of positives.
And look, I know that a lot of people will probably laugh at us talking about so many positives in this show over the last half an hour, but there were. You have to look at Josh Giddey's first half, at Dyson Daniels' defensive game, at Jock Landale's game. Jack McVey made some shots and did some positive things on offense at times. You have to look at Dante Exum's second half. There are positives to take from this contest, which is the great thing, as you guys have said. But we will be with you every step of the way, no matter how far the Boomers and Opals go in this tournament. We will be there post-game live on YouTube after every contest. So we thank you for joining us. Make sure that you like, rate, subscribe to the podcast, to the YouTube channel, and obviously to pickandroll.com.au, which is your home of Aussie hoops. You'll read words from Marc, words from Michael. I can't write, so you won't read words from me, but you will read the best basketball content in Australia, and we will continue to bring you that both on audio, video, and the written words. So, Marc, firstly, thank you for joining us. Thanks for having me. We'll see you after the Greece game, and Michael, we'll see you in the medal rounds.
Sounds good.
See you guys. Have a great night. Get some sleep.